In a world shrouded in secrecy and control, one man dares to challenge the army of red devils. Arrested, imprisoned, under constant watch. They may chain his body, but they can never shackle his soul. As the world watches, his art stands as a powerful symbol of not just freedom, but the fight for human rights. This summer, witness how he wields art as his superpower and scared the shit out of the Dark Lord. Coming soon to a YouTube theater near you. Or better yet, let's start right now. Over the past several decades, Chinese artist Ai Weiwei has become one of the most significant and recognizable figures in contemporary art, activism, and politics. Fearless and unapologetic, Ai Weiwei consistently challenges the Chinese Communist Party, exposing its political hypocrisy, corruption, and abuse of power. As a result, he holds the top spot on the CCP's list of most feared and hated artists. Born in Beijing in 1957, Ai Weiwei is the son of the celebrated Chinese poet Ai Qing, a prominent voice of his generation. Ai Qing studied in Paris, but chose to return to China, where he blended European poetic traditions with his homeland's literary heritage. However, the rise of the People's Republic of China in 1949 shifted the landscape of political loyalty. By 1958, Ai Qing's poetry was criticized as insufficiently political, and his travels were seen as signs of internationalism and a rejection of Chinese identity. As a result, Ai Qing and his family were exiled to a remote village in northwest China. The authorities searched their home, destroying furniture and floor panels, scrutinizing every book, and indiscriminately stealing any objects of interest. During this period of exile, Ai Qing was forced to abandon his writing career and work cleaning public toilets to support his family. In a bid to avoid further trouble, Ai Weiwei and his father burned their treasured collection of books and Ai Qing's own writings. Growing up, Ai Weiwei became acutely aware of the political undercurrents of his environment. Though he aspired to be an artist, he recognized that pursuing formal education in China would entangle him in a rigid system governed by censorship and repression. Consequently, he opted to study film in China with the intention of leaving the country at the first opportunity. Ai Weiwei spent 12 years in the United States. While studying at various institutions, Ai Weiwei supported himself through diverse means, including construction work, portrait painting, babysitting, and gambling. His return to China in 1993, prompted by his father's illness, marked the beginning of his ongoing confrontation with the communist regime. Initially, Ai Weiwei focused on human rights issues and was involved in public campaigns, including one where local activists sought to ban the sale and consumption of cat meat in China. Over time, it became evident that the root of these problems was the corrupt and oppressive government system itself. Alarmed by this growing dissent, the government launched a crackdown on activists and artists, with Ai Weiwei being one of the first targets. Ai Weiwei's studio was officially cited for illegal construction and then demolished without warning. He faced repeated physical assaults and was banned from leaving China when his passport was confiscated by authorities in year 2010. These experiences shifted Ai Weiwei's artistic focus to themes of abuse of power, police brutality, and mass surveillance. In 2008, a devastating earthquake in Sichuan province claimed the lives of 87,000 people, including at least 5,000 children who died when their school buildings collapsed. The disaster was not solely caused by the earthquake, but by the shoddy construction of these buildings. Despite government allocations intended to ensure the safety and stability of schools, the funds were misappropriated by local officials, leaving the buildings unsafe and crumbled. The Chinese government suppressed information about the victims and arrested parents and activists who sought to highlight the tragedy. Weiwei wanted to identify every child lost under the rubble. A year after the tragedy, he uncovered more than 5,000 names, but the authorities immediately blocked his attempts to publish the list. The same year, Weiwei and his assistant were assaulted by police officers and beaten so severely that the artist required brain surgery. The difficulties he faced during his investigation and recovery are clearly shown in films like 4851 and S.A.C.R.E.D. The Munich installation, Remembering, displayed on the facade of Haus der Kunst, serves as a heart-wrenching memorial featuring 9,000 children's school backpacks. Arranged to form a Chinese sentence, the installation quotes a grieving mother who lost her child in the rubble. She lived in this world happily for 7 years. In 2011, Ai Weiwei was arrested at Beijing airport while trying to catch a flight to Hong Kong. During his detention, authorities gave his studio and belongings a thorough search. Sound familiar? It was like a classic rerun. Same old tactics, same uniforms, straight out of the playbook they used on his father decades ago. Some CCP traditions really do stand the test of time. Weiwei was subsequently imprisoned for 81 days on charges of tax evasion and economic crimes. His arrest stirred significant unrest in the global artistic and political arenas, prompting hundreds of activists and politicians to call for his immediate release. His imprisonment later inspired the diorama installation, which depicts his daily routine, sleeping, eating, and showering within life-sized metal boxes. The installation features 2 silent guards and an unrelenting bright light, reflecting the oppressive conditions he endured. Meanwhile, the arrest of Ai Weiwei is a gripping play that debuted at Hampstead Theatre in 2013. British actor Benedict Wong gives a strong performance as Ai Weiwei, vividly portraying the emotional and psychological turmoil the artist faced during his imprisonment. The play powerfully explores state repression and the broader fight for human rights, bringing Ai's harrowing experience to life with intensity. Many of Ai Weiwei's works subvert the visual language of the Chinese political landscape, particularly symbols and narratives tied to the communist regime. Among his most iconic pieces is an installation of 100 million porcelain sunflower seeds meticulously scattered across the floor of Tate Modern for a special exhibition. The sunflower seed is a deeply layered symbol in Chinese culture. During Ai Weiwei's childhood, sunflower seeds were often a lifeline, the only thing keeping families from starvation during famines. Simultaneously, in Maoist propaganda, Mao Zedong was depicted as the sun, with the sunflowers, representing the Chinese people turning toward him. Ai Weiwei employed hundreds of skilled craftsmen to handcraft each seed, making them appear uniform at first glance, yet each one is uniquely distinct. The River Crabs installation is another of Ai Weiwei's politically charged projects, even more direct and bitter in its commentary. In Chinese, Hoxie translates to river crab, but it also sounds similar to the word for harmony, a term frequently used by the government in its promise to build a harmonious society. In response, political dissidents started using the word river crab as a way to talk about censorship. The crabs, shown fighting each other, represent the desperate attempts of people trying to avoid being watched, and the government's ongoing efforts to tighten its control. The river crab symbol first emerged in Ai Weiwei's art in 2010, after the government ordered his studio to be shut down. To prevent him from staging a protest, officials placed him under house arrest. On his final day at the studio, Ai Weiwei ordered several thousand cooked river crabs for everyone, using the crabs as a symbolic gesture to capture the essence of his conflict with the authorities. Another Ai Weiwei's most famous and provocative projects is the photographic triptych titled Dropping the Han Dynasty Urn. In the early 1990s, he acquired two 2,000-year-old vases from a Chinese farmer eager to part with them. Ai Weiwei was struck by the indifference towards cultural heritage in China, a sentiment he had encountered before when the communist regime destroyed temples, artworks, and literature to rewrite history. Outside his mother's house, Ai Weiwei deliberately dropped the vases, shattering them into pieces. Unmoved and unapologetic, he stared directly into the camera with a defiant gaze. This act, sacrilegious to some, was a bold statement, a call to action and a desperate plea to awaken public consciousness. In addition to shattering the priceless vases, Ai Weiwei also repainted several of them, erasing their original cultural identity and replacing it with the Coca-Cola logo. He covered the ancient clay with bold, aggressive strokes of color, transforming these relics into provocative symbols of commercialization. Ai Weiwei was able to leave China in 2015 after his passport, which had been confiscated by the authorities, was returned to him. His departure followed intense international pressure and diplomatic efforts advocating for his release. As of now, Ai Weiwei continues to be an influential figure in both the art world and human rights activism. After leaving China in 2015, he lived in Berlin for several years before relocating to UK and later to Portugal, where he currently resides. In recent years, Ai Weiwei has remained active in creating art that addresses global issues, including migration, freedom of expression, and human rights. He has also continued to critique the Chinese government and other authoritarian regimes through his work. So what do you think about Ai Weiwei's work? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe to this channel for more art adventures. I'll see you in the next one.